Hello, and welcome to a Homeworlds replay commentary. This game is not going to be played live. This is a game that's already taken place. I'm going to be looking at my notes from the game, playing it out on the screen, and making a few comments as we go. This is a game that was played, well, it started last week, being played over Zoom between Andy Looney and a team of players that we referred to as the Hive or the Hive Mind. We ran out of time while playing this game, and we finished the game in a Facebook thread. And I thought this was an interesting game. I wanted to play this game out on the Homeworlds Live Sandbox so that I could create a Homeworlds Live format file of the record of the game. And I figured as long as I was doing that, I might as well make a video and make a few comments, and you could enjoy it too. I've been trying to put out a little bit of Homeworlds content on the YouTube channel every week. It hasn't been working out, but every couple of weeks is close, right? All right, so as I'm doing this, you may see my cursor flick over to the side now and again as I scroll down in my notes so that I can see what happened next. Sorry if that's distracting. All right, Andy went first, and he started with a B3Y2 home fortress setup. He's been favoring the yellow star start, or so I've heard. After a little deliberation, we went with a Goldilocks red B1R3. Unsurprisingly, we both built small ships for our next move. Probably because he saw that there was a blue star that had taken a small blue piece out of the bank. Andy decides to make a run at the blue economy, and we decided to follow suit. Also headed for the blue. If we hadn't, we might have got frozen out of the blue, at least momentarily. I always say that it's harder to get frozen out of a color than you might think, as long as there are larges left. If we hadn't traded for this blue, we could have traded for yellow. And even if Andy had taken that last small blue, we could always trade our large green for a large blue and get in on some of the mediums that he'd been making available, but we didn't. We decided to go with the small blue. Andy's going to build one of these mediums, as do we. Andy decided to move out. He's going to use his blue 2 to discover a new system. Here's where I'm going to start getting a little confused, because in my notes we had names for the systems that were letters, but on this site it uses numbers. So system 3 is going to be A in my notes. And now we didn't have any yellow yet. Let's see, this is still South's turn, and okay. We didn't have any yellow yet, so we can't move out. We can't spread out our blues yet, but we can trade for yellow. We decided to trade our medium yellow. Trade our medium for a yellow. That'll let Andy build a medium. I think we decided that having the extra movement power of a medium yellow was more important than whether Andy got another medium at this time. So he builds another medium at his colony. And at this point, we decided to move our ship out. So we're going to discover also a green system with our small ship. Now, this is something I didn't like too well, but it was pretty urgent that we started spreading our blues out. That was our last blue ship at home. And even though it was probably not very often going to be a good idea to have a blue ship at home and build another blue ship there, I'm always a little more comfortable when I've got a ship of every color, even if it matches the star. But in this case, we really needed to spread out so that we're ready to build larger ships if Andy goes that direction. Just checking my notes. All right. Andy at this point traded his little blue at his home for a yellow. And Andy has done the same sort of thing that I try to avoid, where he's lost his last blue ship at home. But again, since he's got a blue star, it's not a particularly big deal, and that blocks us from building the medium blue at a time when Andy would not be able to build the large blue afterward because of the catastrophe threat. Checking my notes again. You know what? Oh dear. Well, let's see how good this rewind feature is. It looks like I think I actually skipped a line here. So something that happens with my handwritten notes is that I often make mistakes when I'm trying to go back through a replay. So you get to experience this with me today. What's even worse is I often make mistakes as I'm just doing the writing. I'll accidentally skip a turn, and it's a very interesting puzzle to go back through my notes and try to figure out where my mistakes happened and what really occurred. Okay. Let's see. So Andy built his B2. We discovered a new system. Oh, no, that was right. Oh, I'm so sorry. All right. Yep. That was correct. I did not lose my place. I thought I had. All right, we build a Y1 back at our home. Okay, there we go. We're back on track. All right, Andy's going to build a G1, and we're going to trade our Y1 for an R1. I think, trying to remember if there was anything particular about my my reason for suggesting that we make this move at this time. I think because it was it's been the first move in a while when we've had a duplicate ship. We had 2 yellows, and so trading away one for a red doesn't create a situation where we don't have a ship of that, where we trade away our last ship of a particular color. Andy decided it was also a good time to head for the red. He traded a blue 2 for a red 2. Okay, and at this point we are worried that while it would take a sacrifice to do it, he might move one of, well, probably his red ship to our colony, threatening to take our little blue, which would be pretty inconvenient. And so, even though it causes us to no longer have a yellow at our home, which will be important later, we decide to defend our colony with our only medium ship. Okay, now I've got to scroll down and lose my place, apparently. Line 48. Andy decides he needs more yellow, which I think is a good idea. Although he won't be able to build another one, we'll get to build one without opening up the medium just yet. All right, he built the Y1. We decide rather than building the yellow, we're actually going to build a red. sort of surprises me. I think our concern was that if, well, one concern is that if Andy had moved, say, his blue to system 4 with a sacrifice, and we'd only had this one little red ship, we could sacrifice that to attack his blue, but then he could move in his red. We would then be out of red, and he could start attacking things at will. We mentioned that we were concerned about this to Andy, and he said Balderdash he wouldn't be sacrificing so many little yellows to achieve that. He thought it was nonsense, but we were concerned anyway, so we built our little red. Andy now moves one of his little yellows to his colony. That's now a happy system, as we say. It's got one piece of every color. We now traded one of our reds for a yellow, so I was quite concerned about the fact that we didn't have any yellow in our home anymore. That can be a big problem since home is where it's our only place where we have green. If we ever want to move a green somewhere, it's since we don't have a yellow star, our home is a great place to produce yellow, and so we ought to keep a yellow at home at all times. Just the way the economies worked out, it happened that we had to trade for yellow twice, so we lost a move in doing that, but this is a more comfortable position, and I think it may actually, I was talking about it before, but it may have been at this point that we raised concerns about if Andy moved in his blue, we'd have to take it with our only red, and then he moves in our red and starts attacking at will unless we sacrifice for a bunch of moves to evacuate. Not comfortable. So we'll probably want to get a red again, another red, or move our red to the colony as soon as possible. All right. Now, so we traded our little yellow for a red most recently, like I said. And Andy's going to build a little red. Oh, need to end our turn first. Build a little red here. And then to defend the colony, we move our little red out. And again, that's a lack of red ships in our home, but it's not such a big deal since we already have a red star. And we now have a happy home, one piece of each color. And Andy's now going to use the little yellow in his home to discover a blue ship, a blue system. That surprises me. That opens up the blue for us. Hoping I haven't made a mistake in these notes somewhere. That seems a little odd. Well, we'll see how this goes. Now, we decided that this was a good time for a shopping spree, as we say. We sacrificed our large green, and we built a yellow 2. And another yellow 2. And, sorry, a yellow 3 and a yellow 3. Now, this looks very scary for our home, but Andy doesn't have a medium yellow that he could get another yellow to our home right now for a catastrophe. So this is all right, even though the site is giving us a warning about how unwise this is. What's the warning? You have 3 ships in your homeworld and they're all the same color. If your opponent can move just one more in, you would lose, so be careful. But he cannot, so that's all right. Gonna go ahead and end our turn anyway. Turn the warnings back off. All right. Andy, no doubt, will build that last Y3. Yep, there we go. All right, Andy now does have a ship that he can sacrifice and get another yellow to our home. So let's not give him the opportunity. We're going to trade our small yellow for a small green in our home. And our home is pretty happy again. It's got every color available. Andy now is going to use his little yellow. Interesting. His little yellow down here to discover a green system. Wonder if he thinks he's got the green advantage, and so he wants to run out the medium greens, so he'll have a better chance to get larges. Maybe thinking we'll trade away some of these juicy yellows, and he'll get to build another one. We now use a yellow 2 to discover a green. So Andy is not in a good position to, he can't build these green 3s, but we can. So we take away that last medium green to open up the larges. He decides to block the build of larges by trading away his little green. And Andy now has a happy home with one piece of each color. Since Andy's opened up the medium reds, we build a medium red. It's always a little more comfortable to have 2 reds than 1, since, like we talked about before, if Andy had created 1 threat where we had to sacrifice our red, we would have no red left. And Andy would be able to create another threat, and we'd have to run away. With 2 reds, we've got a backup. It's good to have a backup plan. All right, Andy now also builds red. And Andy needs more red than we do. Andy is hoping to, at some point, catastrophe our red star, so he's got a need for more red beyond what he'll want for attacking. We now use our red 2 in our colony to discover a new Y1 system. Let's see, after we end Andy's turn. So at this point, I think we may have been worried that the Andy's choice of a fortress homeworld was coming into play. There were very few small pieces left in the bank, and there was a risk of so many of them becoming ships that we wouldn't be able to get a foothold on Andy's doorstep. We wouldn't be able to make a small star colony. So we decided to make one now while it was available. All right, Andy now is going to trade that little red for a little blue. With 3 red ships, Andy has enough red to catastrophe our star, and what he's lacking for the win now, material-wise, is blue. So that's my guess for why he chose that. Trade R1, B1, Andy. Build a B2. So that opens up the medium blues, so we take one, and I'm sure Andy's going to take one too. Build B2B. Oh no. So he's going to move his R2 Here's where the letter part gets exciting. All right, from A to D, that's going to be from 3 to 6. So he's defending his colony, getting red in position for catastrophe. I'm a little surprised he didn't take the medium blue when it was available, since it wouldn't have been safe for us to build a large blue because of the catastrophe threat. But that's his pick. Maybe he thought defending was more important. Oh, if he hadn't done that, we could have moved. Well, we could have given up this colony to threaten his little yellow, but his little yellow can run away, and our red couldn't. So I don't think that's it. I think that's a surprising choice to me. I would not have done that. We now use our Y2 to discover a red 3. Oh, okay. Well, I just figured out. So during the game, I apparently understood what that move was about. Andy was setting himself up for a big ol' shopping spree, sacrificing his green 3 to build little red, big red, big red, gaining a large ship. And we blocked that by discovering one of the large pieces as a star. So if he did that green sacrifice now, he'd only be able to build one large, and he wouldn't come out ahead in the large department. So that's why moving his red to 6 was a good move. It had his reds all very nicely spread out for those 3 builds. Okay, we discover with a medium 2. Yep. Andy now is going to use little yellow here in this colony to discover a green 3. Interesting. I'm not too sure what that's about either. If it was a race for the large green, he was in as good a position as us, I think. Or nearly. Since we each just have one place where we can build green. Although if he'd built the small and we'd built the large, Andy wouldn't be able to build the... Well, Andy may have been worried that we would build... Let's see, which direction? If we'd built the small, he'd built the large. We spread out our greens. He spreads out his greens. Then we get to build the last large, and he'd have had to have blocked us or something. Well, so he may have been worried that we would start trying to build up the greens and he'd get behind. No? I'm not too sure about that move either. But such it is. We now built another... Oh, interesting. Really? Discover with a Y1 in a G3 named H. Oh, okay, here we go. Move a B2 from B to F. All right, and F is this one, 8 in our notation. Okay, so we're now in a position where we could theoretically blow up Andy's blue star if he doesn't do anything about it by sacrificing our large yellow. We could move this little blue 2 times and this medium blue 1 time to blow up his little blue and a star, but that would be a pretty heavy investment. Although, since he's just got a yellow star left and we have some yellow, oh well, we wouldn't have that large yellow anymore, and Andy would build that large yellow. That's not something we actually want to do yet. That's not a real threat. All right, now that I've thoroughly lost my place again. we just moved our B2 from 4 to 8. Andy's now going to sacrifice. Blue sacrifices always take me a little off guard. Andy's going to sacrifice his little blue to trade his little yellow for a little blue. So he's done a sort of a blue teleport. He has a happy home once again. And with red and blue poised on our doorstep, Andy's making his way toward a doomsday machine. What did we do? We used our Y2 here in system 7 to discover a Y1. So this move I remember. On this move I'm quite certain that my concern was one, that we need a secondary system for building up ships to get into Andy's home. So we need to make sure that there's a second small star under our control, and we didn't want it to be green because that opens up Andy to, well, let's see, if we'd opened up the green and he'd built the G2, would have got to build the G3, so that's not so bad. Definitely didn't want to make it red. But I think we wanted to take that yellow out of the bank, because even though Andy has some yellow, including a large yellow, every extra yellow ship you have increases your options. As it is, Andy's got to, in order to move ships around, he's got to keep moving his yellows around. It's costing him extra turns, and I think we wanted to keep it that way. All right. So yellow at yellow looks funny, but that was our pick. Andy now is going to use his B2 to discover... Oh, then we end our turn. A G3 system. I think he wants... Actually, that surprises me a little bit. Let's see, is that more bank manipulation? Was he still worried about us getting that a large green somehow? I don't see how. There's no advantage to building blues here compared to 3. There was no extra blue here. That move surprises me as well. Not too sure what's going on there. Or maybe he hopes in the future to trade this B2 for a G2 and do a green banker move. So if you want to cash in on a green investment like this, you have to have a medium green to sacrifice. So if all the greens were gone and Andy had sufficient greens on the board, and he trades this for if this at some point had become a green 2, then Andy would be able to sacrifice the green 2. Both the star and the ship go back to the bank. He builds the green 2 and builds the green 3 as ships. So that might be what he's going for here. All right, so Andy just discovered a G3 with his blue, and so we build a B2. So this was, we did this same move a couple of times, building a B2 in this system. And I always thought it was a little funny because in the game, this system was called B, and so in my notes I said B2B. Building a B2 in system B. All right, Andy at this point built a B3 in system D. Uh-oh. Let's see. Is that right? Oh, okay. System D is this one. That is correct. Oh, it's still our turn. End turn. Okay, I thought I had got lost in my notes. Okay, and this is the point at which the Zoom call had been going for about 2.5 hours, and some people were tired and decided that this was a challenging move and that we'd want to go think about it some more, and that we would resume over a Facebook call, or rather a Facebook thread. And so we took screenshots of the position. Our captain posted a copy of the state of the game to the Homeworlds Facebook group, and the players from the Zoom call, as well as some people who were not there, chimed in on what they thought should be done at this point. And this is, I think, the most interesting move of the game. I and at least one other very experienced player did not think we should be building the blue here in System 4. We didn't want to do that. Let's see, we didn't really want to lose our last green by sacrificing the little green to build in 8. And we certainly didn't want to build in 4 because of the catastrophe risk. B3 and F. Is this it? No, it's late. You know what? I think it's later. It's not. No, never mind. I take it back. We knew what we were pretty sure what we. I'm sorry. This position looks like a position we'll see later, where we were more worried about a catastrophe. But what's going to happen here is we're going to do what we had in mind to do the night before. We sacrificed a little green so that we could build a large as well. So we're keeping even on the large count, 3 and 3. Let me scroll down in my notes again. Okay, not a whole lot left. Now the remainder of this game took a full week to play out online because a day would go by and everybody had weighed in, and then the captain would decide what our move should be, and then Andy would think for a few hours or a day and post his move. And so even though there aren't a whole lot of moves left, it took a while to play them all out. Okay, so this was the... Okay, here comes the interesting part. Andy traded his blue 3 for a red 3. And Andy had, I think, the same mental block that I did, where I thought, we don't have any green to sacrifice to build that green out here. And so we there's that big blue that's open that we've just got to keep Andy from building that big blue. We can't build it in 8. We shouldn't build it in 4 because he'll just sacrifice his little yellow to catastrophe it. So we've just got to discover a blue 3 system, but there aren't any ships that we want to do that with because we'd be giving up nice positions in other ways. So this is the position I was actually talking about before that I had in mind, that I and another very strong player were immediately discarded the idea of building that blue 3 here. But our captain, our fearless captain, who in terms of Homeworlds play has not played as much, and he said, well, no, why don't we just go ahead and build that B3? If Andy were to blow it up, he would be... Look at the position from this point. Imagine that we build the B3 and he sacrifices his little yellow and his blue 2. What did we lose? We lost a medium and a small. Andy loses a medium and a small. He loses them from 2 system. He loses one of his only 2 yellow ships. He's down to 1 blue ship. That actually puts us in quite a good position. It's not bad at all to build that blue 3. And I said, oh my gosh, you're right. So we did. That I think is one of the most interesting moves of the game. Probably the most interesting move of the game. At least because of the mental block I had. So we boldly built that B3. Andy declined to make that catastrophe happen. He moved, let's see, build B3, moved his Y3 from A to D. Now D is the fourth letter of the alphabet, so that means it's system 6. Okay, so he moved it up here to give these ships some mobility. So this is what I was saying before, that if you don't have many yellow ships, then you spend time moving your yellow ships around to give movement power to your other ships, and that can be pretty annoying. Move Y3. Now we move our B3 from B to I. Now I is the 9th letter, so that's system 11. So we were concerned, I'm sure, that Andy was going to move. Well, maybe. We may have been concerned that Andy would move his red 3 to our colony here, and we could run away, but it would be kind of a nuisance. And I find that my playstyle changes when I play asynchronously. I don't like useless things like, oh, invading and the person just runs away and that didn't accomplish anything, but it took time. And if you play on Super Duper games or in a Facebook thread, that exchange that didn't seem to accomplish anything might take 2 days, and it's a real pain. And so when I'm playing in person, I might not have worried about that so much, but I really didn't want Andy to move here and have us just have to run away, because it would take time off my life. All right, so we defended instead. We moved B3 from B to I, correct. And this also, another part of this move that I was ignoring at the moment was that we've now got the blue phase of a Doomsday Machine set up. So we can now, without sacrificing any yellow at all, catastrophe Andy's blue star. We move in a large blue. He's got to attack it, because otherwise we sacrifice our red 2 and capture his stuff. Or he could do some building so we couldn't capture everything at once, but once your opponent has a large in your home and you don't, you're usually in big trouble. So we move in one blue that way. Then we move in our other large blue. Again, he's got to attack it, because otherwise we attack all his larges, and then we can move in our medium blue for the blue catastrophe, blowing up his star without ever having had to sacrifice a yellow ship. So this is a very sweet position to have. And with all that talking, I think I've just lost my place in my notes again. It is South's turn, that is to say Andy's turn. He's going to build a green 1 in his home. So now he's made it so, well, he needs more ships. And it doesn't mean much, but with a 3rd ship, we wouldn't be able to take all of the ships in his home in one go if we tried. But moving in would still be good. Is that what we do next? Let's see. He builds green 1. Yep, we go ahead and we move a B1 from I to Andy. Okay, so I is system 11. Okay, so we are doing what I just talked about. Andy, unsurprisingly, simply takes it. if he had had another capture threat on the board, he might have sacrificed his red 2 to capture both this and something else, but he didn't. Move b3, attack, and then we did. We moved our other b3 to Andy's home. And at this point, Andy sees the writing on the wall, because if he simply attacks this blue 3, we move in our last blue for the blue catastrophe, and then we can start moving in yellows, because with the destruction of this blue star, System 9 is now connected to Andy's home, and our home is connected to Andy's home. So in 2 more moves, we could win. We move in our little yellow to Andy's home. He takes it or doesn't, we don't really even care. And then we sacrifice the large yellow in System 4 to move the yellow from System 9, the yellow from our home, and since that's the last piece from our home, we've got to move something back. We move the medium blue back to our home so that our home is occupied. That puts 3 yellows in Andy's home. We call catastrophe, and we win. And Andy realizes that this is going to happen, in part because we talked about it on the, well, Andy may have noticed, may or may not have seen that we were discussing that sequence of events on the Facebook thread. And so rather than simply attacking this blue, when he can be quite certain that he will lose in that, with that choice, he makes a bolder move that throws everything into question a little bit. He sacrifices his large yellow. Here, I've got to look at my notes close. And he's going to move his green 3 from Andy to System I. I think he should have moved to the blue to make it harder for us to do the catastrophe. Moves his green 3 from Andy to what I call I. He moves his R3 from there to our home, and moves the R2 from there to our home. Now, Andy still has... Andy's threatening, of course, to win on his turn if we don't do something about the large that's just invaded our home. And we don't have enough red to catastrophe... enough red to take over everything in Andy's home right this minute. So we've absolutely got to either catastrophe or capture that large red. We could, I suppose, move our little red into our home and blow up the star ourselves to get rid of the capture threat, but we didn't really want to do that. There was some debate about whether we should capture this large red and Andy's blue, or Andy's red even, in his home. In the end, though, we decided to capture both of the 2 invading ships. Just say, thanks for the gift. Because Andy now, he has no way to catastrophe our star. He doesn't have enough yellow to get back there. He just spent all his yellow. And here I think this may have been a mistake for Andy to move his large green instead of his large blue, because we again have a catastrophe threat. We're prepared to do a catastrophe in Andy's home. Andy now, he captures that blue, but that's still too much blue in his home. And we can now do a I think they call this a demolition fleet. We sacrifice the yellow 3 to move that 4th blue ship into Andy's home. We call the catastrophe, and we now have 2 more movements. Oh, this is interesting. I don't think I've seen this before. The large systems have been split up in the graphical display here, because both smalls and larges are both connected to Andy's home. That's an interesting graphical choice. I would have kept the larges together, even though they're connected to the same home, but there you go. All right. We've now got 2 more movement actions. We decided to move our large red into Andy's home and our medium yellow to Andy's home. There were a few other things we could have done that were similar, but we liked this the best. And Andy could technically keep himself from losing on our very next turn by moving his large green back into our home. We would not be able to capture both his large and the other 2 ships in his home. Because to capture 3 ships, we'd have to sacrifice our large, but we wouldn't be able to attack his green 3 if we sacrificed our large red. But rather than delaying the game an extra turn, Andy decided to sacrifice his green for a couple of red builds. Call the red catastrophe, so at least he gets to take down our big red. And he also built 1 more blue. And then, of course, it's all over. We sacrifice for 2 captures. And take the rest of Andy's ships. And graphically speaking, Andy's home just got demoted to an ordinary yellow 2 system. And that was the game. And I had a lot of fun. This was a game, like I said, done over Zoom with a team playing against Andy. Andy offered this opportunity as part of the Looney Labs Silver Jubilee celebration. And it was, I think, educational for the newer players who were there, who could listen, give suggestions, and hear the discussion of the more experienced players. And the experienced players got to talk to each other, hear about each other's styles, and of course, anytime you play a player as strong as Andy, you're going to learn something. And we did. Well, thank you so much for watching. I would like to produce videos like this a little more often than I have been, but at least this week I am successfully putting one out. Thank you so much for watching. Look in the video info for more about Homeworlds if you don't know what this is already. Thanks, bye.